And we are live. Peace and blessings, family. Welcome back for another great conversation today on this African spirituality conversation. And I'm letting everybody introduce themselves so everybody know who everybody is while I get this thing set up. So introduce yourselves, family.
I'm Ialode Iale Olamide Bangbala.
Now, who else we got?
I'm Ifeoma Dupe.
Right.
You follow me.
All right. Okay. So today, and I'm Rolanda. I'm Ro. And the sun is out today, so I'm very excited because the sun is in the sky. And so after I finish with y'all, I'm gonna be going out for a walk. And I'm so excited because it was so rainy and dreary yesterday. I was like, ah. So today, what we're gonna talk about as I get set up. Today we're on Facebook, of course, but we're also live on YouTube. So I'm going to be sharing like where people can go comment on the link and support the link. So that way you can watch this and don't have to do it on Facebook. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing it this way as well, building up where people can watch us in other mediums and not just Facebook. So that's one thing. Today we're going to talk about two distinct things, and it rolls into other things. And I will pray as we do this conversation that it's about learning. And all I'm going to ask is, as you explain, be mindful of the time so other people can jump in and we can go further. So you may want to try to make your comments a little shorter so we can cover more ground. And today we're missing our other Ia, but she's not feeling as good. But I always, I'm so used to y'all. So she'll be back with us hopefully tomorrow. So, and I just hope people can join in. But I think the conversation we're going to have is a timely one because I feel like sometimes in our culture, we don't always know sometimes the history or maybe understand how we're all connected, if you will, and in African traditional spirituality and the variations of it. So, Ia Colette, I'm going to start with you mainly. Could you open us up in prayer and then we'll get right on it?
Yes, I'd be happy to. We give thanks, Olodumare, Orisha, and Egun, as we pour Omitutu, which is cool water, to the earth. We bless the ground that you tread in search of our freedom. We are forever grateful for your minute by minute presence in our lives and our hearts. Please accept our offerings, our prayers, and petitions of request and thankfulness. Keep us from harm, keep us from death, keep us from sickness, keep us from trouble and confusion, keep us from gossip, keep us from poverty. If we are to face any of these obstacles, we ask for the strength to carry the load. May our lives and the lives of our loved ones be full on this day and every day hereafter. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Asheo. So one of the things I'm gonna be practicing today, y'all, when someone's speaking, I'm gonna mute my phone because some of this stuff can be my phone. So I got so much stuff open. So we may want to do that a little bit so it's clear for whoever's talking. But everybody sounds great to me, but I'm gonna do that anyway. So my first question is, what is the origin story of African spirituality? Because we have a lot of different systems from Candomblé to Shango the Baptist to Santeria to Lukumi to Ifa to the Kemetic systems to Akan. Your friends at Akan. Can anybody kind of give us some of the origin of the root, if you will, of a lot of these things?
Well, I like to way that Yeah, I did it yesterday in regards to Ifa being that overall, that center, and that as we spread out further throughout the diaspora, throughout the world, that branches began to form. It's all one. This is where we are, um, where we were when the various um, branches came along. Short version.
Does that answer your question, bro? Or
Yeah. Well, the thing. So, what I recognize is that, like, how did a lot of the so we know they all come from the root in Africa, right? In this case, well, I guess we're talking about Nigeria. If you're practicing in that particular line, how did it then get to all the other places? Like, why does it appear in Candomblé in Brazil, or Shango the Baptist in the Caribbean, or Santeria in Cuba, or I mean, I'm just naming spaces. How did that come to be?
When we traveled, some of us traveled through the slave ships, but some of us also traveled on our own. When we were brought to or came to the various places, we took what we could remember. Depends upon whether you were a priest or you were a practitioner or how much you took that remembrance to the place you went. You know, so before the ice age, we were all together. We could walk. And when the ice age broke, we got kind of stuck. You know, but we still had the remembrance of our traditions. And that's how what my research led me to understand is that that's what happened. How it got to all these different places and how when we do a remembrance, you know, it's like when you play telephone, you know, and you're saying, you know, I could say to Modupe is a, hey, you know, we went over here to, you know, such and such a place, and this is what we used to do and how we used to do it. She, by the time she may go to Row and say, hey, you know, and it comes out just a little bit different or how she hears it. But the truth factor, it lies, you can see that throughout all the things that we're doing, the consistency, you know, is that foundation, that truth factor. The consistency is what we're looking at.
yeah.
So, yeah, let me ask you this. Colette, so your family is from Panama and Bermuda, right?
No. My maternal side is from Panama and Barbados. My paternal, my father, people are from Dominica. And Bermuda, I came here on vacation and met my husband, and that was the end of that story.
Okay. I love it. So I'm only asking because when I talk to Black women from the Caribbean and Latin America, they tend to have a little bit more to the story. It's not as generified as we get in the US. So for instance, when I was in Cuba, I learned about Catholicism and how the enslaved Africans basically were not allowed to practice their spiritual traditions, so they hid it behind the saints. So if they were praying to, I don't know, Santa Barbara, that really would be somebody else. And so I'm trying to have a conversation around some of the origin stories so that people can see the connections. Because sometimes, like people, they think that things may be different, but really there's a reason why it may look different, but it's still connected to the branch. And sometimes you have to explain it in that way and not generify it. Because we do a lot of generifying, which is why sometimes our information don't be right, because you do have to recognize how people survive. That's why I have so much respect for Cubans who in Tanzania, even though I'm not Catholic, we did have Catholics in our family. I thought to myself, damn, how brilliant was that for you to still, in oppression, figure out how to pray to the way you want to pray in the midst of people oppressing you. That is amazing.
Mhm. Well, we did that. You did that in the United States. We took our African traditional ways, and they sometimes came out in the Baptist church. But if you listen to some of that music, when it's usually, well, I've heard it with the men, and they clap and they use their feet, and they don't have any instruments. It's just their voices and the
Mhm.
syncopation of it. That's us. That's
Yes.
our drums. That's our rhythm. That's, so we did that. And then, of course, in Louisiana, and outside of Louisiana too, but we all usually think of Louisiana in that they maintained the voodoo or the voodoo part of their tradition, because the majority of them, of the slave population in the Louisiana territory, came from Benin and Dahomey. The same thing with Haiti. Haiti has voodoo because uh, the majority of the people there came from Benin and Dahomey. And the thing is, it may have been the majority and it may not have. It may have been that those people of Benin and Dahomey were powerful enough to superimpose or introduce their traditional ways to, to Louisiana or to Haiti. And then, of course, you have the Yoruba, who were the latecomers. And that's why, as far as being snatched from their homeland and brought over to this side of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, it's interesting when you're going to look at candomblé and how that grew in Brazil, because, of course, the Portuguese brought the slave trade over to Brazil almost 100 years before it was brought to the Caribbean or North America. And so that would be an interesting thing to research and to study exactly how it grew in Brazil. But the one thing that I do know about Brazil is, again, they used they put their spirituality underneath the skirts of the saints, and they used the saints. They had that same synchronization as, or similar synchronization as Cuba and some of the other countries. Now, when you get to Panama, I don't know that much. Probably Ia would know more about that, because she also, I believe she was born in Panama, whereas I was born in New York. So I don't really have the feel for that she would have. But our ways, the ways that I got from my grandmother, were very ancient. They just didn't come out of Panama. They came from her grandmother, who got them from her grandmother. So they came out of Africa, which is a whole nother conversation, really.
Y'all, so what I'm doing is that I am, as people are talking, I mute everybody else, so that the one person that cuts down on the static, because I'm talking with people who said they hear static, but they said it's working when I do the muting, so that's great. Anybody else want to add on to their spirituality connection to the root, if you will?
Well, I have no comment. But I have to add, when I left Panama, I was 13 years old. And from my grandmother and mother, I did practice voodoo traditions, family way behind that, who came from. I didn't talk too much about it, and she didn't conversations or
Yeah,
missions to us.
your sound is breaking up.
That's what I'm telling you. Everything is it's like status.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just heard it right now. So it's like when you talk, it just be breaking up. So I'm like, oh
I
no.
know. It's horrible.
You see, right now I can't even
Let
hear.
me
Okay. So I guess she's gonna try this again. So I'll throw it out there, and then we could just kind of build onto it. So with that being said, so yeah, Colette, you did a really good job of explaining that. I felt like that was really good. What happens though? I understand we do things for survival and trying to protect our spiritual traditions or practices and things like that. But when there are changes made to the spiritual traditions and the people don't necessarily love or like Africans or Black people, how do we correct that? Because I've seen people who act like this is something that they developed where they were and will not connect it back to Africa. What do we do about that? Anybody can answer that. I just want to throw that out there. But let me know when you talk so I can unmute you so the staff don't be high. Okay, there you go. Go ahead, sis.
Um, well, I think that's a difficult question to answer. Like, what do we do? Because it's gonna be on a like case by case basis. I'm sure, because there's different reasons why people would de-Africanize the tradition. Some of it's just a power grab. You know what I mean? Like a lot of conspiracy theorists are always talking about how African science is being used against African people in the diaspora to undermine our efforts to evolve. Um, and and to a degree, that's a real thing. Also, we use our own science and don't acknowledge that that's what it is. I think a lot of times it has to do with our view of ourselves. Like if you think about it on a from a even a global perspective, well, specifically in the United States, it's an issue that um, we get little or no respect in general, and then certain Black people distance themselves from the idea of Africa just because they don't want to be associated with other Black people. So if you can benefit from, like, the power is not partial. So the power is impartial to um, whether who's using it. If you follow the math and follow the science, what we do in the tradition works regardless. I think what happens for us is, as Black people, we have some other challenges to overcome in terms of our internal evolution. We can't individually and collectively move forward if we're denying ourselves. So a part of that is just being able to embrace our own ancestry. Like that's a issue for us. We're socialized and conditioned out of um, loving ourselves, and now we have to remedy that. We can't just push past it and smash past our ancestors and be like, well, this is, what I'm doing is a spiritual tradition. Yeah, it does have some roots in Africa, but it's not really African. that's not that's disrespectful to our ancestors, basically. we have to really be conscious of that. That when we disrespect our ancestors, we disrespect ourselves. And I think that's one of the challenges that we get to overcome and work with. I can't hear any.
I got to remember to unmute myself. So one of the questions that I have as well is, do you find it hard to worship with people who are not African in the tradition? Does it change when they enter the room, or it depends? Because sometimes I don't always see like houses. I say that they're heavily people who are Latino who don't look black. And I know we like to know that everybody from out of Africa, and that's nice. But in science, it works a little differently. But that's another story. But sometimes I don't always see like the African houses or the black houses that practice some kind of African spirituality mixing in or working together with groups who are maybe heavily Latino in particular, or Caribbean, or even with white people in it. Can anybody answer that? Do you think that? Because I know at some point we talk about coming together, but I think in order to come together, you kind of have to talk about some of the things that may hinder us from being able to come together. Because I know we love to go to like the big love fest, but before we get to the love fest, you got to talk about why we wasn't in love in the first place. You got your hand up, sis? Go ahead.
So, with that, I feel like, we're always talking about Mother Africa. So, I talk to people, well, that's why they call her Mother Africa, because that's where our roots are from. And when people are coming to a person who may be a practitioner and they're asking about, our way of life and stuff, I don't feel a negative thing for that person asking. I'd rather that person ask, and I can do the best I can to answer the question so they can know what the truth factors are. If people walk around and they just have a fantasy about, oh, well, y'all are like this and y'all are like this, it causes a dissension. Whether they are a practitioner, this shouldn't matter what your nationality, your facial, your outlook, your physical being is. For a person's heart to be a certain kind of way, for your soul to be a certain kind of way, your spirituality to be a certain kind of way. It comes from within. So, and if we look at even Mother Africa, I mean, she has all different flavors and colors and, hair textures and all different kinds of stuff. So we can't judge because a person says something looks different, that they're not spiritually connected, and that we can't spiritually connect each other because we're different looking. That was one of the reasons why, I loxed my hair when I did, and relaxed it again after my initiation, because it was a representation to me, the roots of a tree. You can't just stop it. You nourish it one way or the other, and through spirituality. This is a way that we can do that. We should be doing that, regardless of how someone looks.
Before Sister LaDonna is saying, you'll be next, Sister. Sister LaDonna is saying, reclaiming African spirituality for Black Americans is almost political, and that's where it gets complicated. Okay, Ia, let me get you unmuted. Okay, go ahead.
I agree with what Ia LaDonna has to say. I just want to put in that when we're talking about this, and we're talking about people who are, all of us, people who are following, let's say, the Yoruba tradition, and let's say we're Lukumi or Santari or whatever. For me, in my experience, and I guess it's because I do have a Panamanian background and relatives, many, oh gosh, it's my dog. Many times, there's not a respect for the root of the tree. which are my people who came out of Africa. And that has to be addressed. And if when it happens to me, and it happened to me in Botanicas, where it's as if I am encroaching, and maybe this is my stuff. Maybe this is my stuff. I don't think so, because it's happening to other people who look like me. Um, that I'm encroaching on my own tradition. And so I do think it's something that has to be acknowledged. Because if we try to sweep it under the rug, it's never going to be solved. And we need to know, we need to acknowledge that the root of this tree came out of Africa, like everything else, really. And we can't just be disrespectful or belittle the house where there are mainly black people, and be at odds with the house where there are Latino people. We have to give respect where respect is due, and that's it, straight up. And that does not happen. It hasn't been happening. I think we're getting better at it. And I think we're getting better at it because the times are changing. And we as African descended people are becoming more in tune, more we feel stronger about who we were, what our background really is, and the greatness of us. And so we can stand up for our own traditions and call them our own traditions. Yes, this came out of Cuba. Yes, it may have come out of Cuba, but how did Cuba get it? They got it from the Africans that came over and were enslaved. They weren't slaves, they were enslaved in Cuba and worked to hell to death, some of them, in the sugar fields. That's my 2 cents. Can't hear you.
I said, okay, I just had to unmute myself. No, right on, right on. So let me ask you this. How do we begin that healing? Because if we're all being drawn to the root, whether if we know where the root is from or not, how do we begin that healing process, like in realistic terms? Like, how do we do that? I see you, sis. I'm going for you right now. You're on.
I just want to say that we have to not be afraid to say that this is for black people. That is by black people. That is, and that's. I'm trying to find the words to say this gently. The African tradition, in its many forms, derivative and the pure traditional sense, or however you want to look at it, is the genesis of it is Africa, and that's our people. And so if we discard it like it's nothing, then we can't be mad when other people pick it up and run it. But if we haven't done that, which nobody here has done that, we have not discarded it. We have claimed it as our own. Then I think as much as we can speak to that when we speak about it, I think it will begin to heal some of the issues. But also not be afraid for it to be different from what everybody else is doing. Like, we have to recognize that also the worldview and cosmology of the tradition is different from Christianity. It's different from Islam. There are some similarities when it comes to morality and other things like that, but the general structure of it is different. The way that we worship and venerate is different. The way that we look at divinity is different. The way that we look at ourselves and how we're made is different. We have been indoctrinated with certain ideas like because of we're in our human form, that we don't matter. And that takes away, it detracts from the idea of wholeness that exists in the tradition. It detracts from the idea of personal responsibility that exists in the tradition. And a lot of times, what happens is people come in with their this consciousness. When we talk about these different forms of the tradition that are practiced throughout North and Latin America, we can clearly see that it follows the trade route for the transatlantic slave trade. It's not, I mean, we were under duress. And so coming out of that and trying to heal ourselves of that, this is a piece of that. This is a part of the repair process, reclaiming African tradition as our own, and then remove. We had to practice, as Ia says, under the skirt of the saints. Now we can take that skirt away. We don't have to eat the cow to get the grass. And so, if we insist upon that, you know, those that can see insist upon it and point to this is why we're doing it, and really are vocal about it, and just even just present and active about it, then I think that that starts the healing process. If we take away the timidity to say, I understand why a person who was born and raised in Cuba would practice Santeria. That's not my story. I was born and raised in Oakland. So so my objective, what I need my spirituality to do for me is gonna be different. What's on my heart every day is different. I'm thinking about how our kids can't, we don't know if they're going to come back when they leave out the door. I'm thinking about how the police are a present danger, like a mortal danger for us on a regular basis. I'm thinking about how we have issues with economic empowerment that revolve around the system, but also our way of seeing resources in lack. And these are the burdens that I have. They're not necessarily everybody's thing, but if you were born and raised in Cuba, you probably have some other concerns. You know what I mean? So we being real about what you need your spirituality to do for you is and realizing that you deserve that. That you get to have that. You get to thrive. It's not like that's the thing that I realized with Black people in the States is that it's you have to spend so much time convincing them that they actually deserve to thrive, because it's we're so accustomed to taking shorts that that's just become our way of being. And so to say that, oh, it's an African tradition, but we don't really hold Africans in high regard, is just another way that we can play small and play ourselves, basically. So we have to step up outside of that and say, no, that's no longer acceptable.
Ooh, sis. Okay, I got to remember the button. So, with that being said, how do we then start bridging that, though? What is that going to take? What do we? How can we start doing
it? Well, I want to just share this story. When I had Elekes, not a lot of people give Elekes anymore, but when I had Elekes, and there were a group of practitioners that wanted to organize in North America. Maya, you might remember this time. And so it was like Fashina Faladay, Folakun Fatumbi, what's the Cuban brother's name? He's Cuban and Haitian, in Yagbe in Oakland. It was a lot of practitioners that got together. Fama, who else was there? I think at one point, Wande Abimbola became a part of it. But they're trying to organize all of the practitioners in Northern California. And my godmother they're trying to come up with a name, and she said wanted to make sure that Black was in the name. She was like, our burden is for Black people. We work for people of color primarily, and we dealing with, like, at the time, gang violence and all this different stuff. So they argued for a good 30, 45 minutes over whether or not Black should be in the name, because the majority of people were against it. That we wanted to say that this is a group of practitioners that are practicing a Black African tradition. And eventually the effort to organize fell apart. But I'll bring it up because we have to find a strategy. I don't know what the strategy is, but we do have to find a strategy that'll let us engage in conversation and then be okay if people don't want to participate because they're not buying into the idea that Black Africans need to be respected and held in high regard as a part of practicing this tradition. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm back in. The Donna is saying, Ifa Modubu raises great points. Our environment determines what we need from our spirituality on one level. And as we evolve, our needs evolve. So she basically said, and I felt that. That makes sense. That makes sense. I just always wonder, how do we begin to be able to really to bridge some of that gap work? And what I mean when I say that is, I totally get that. That depending on your environment, case what you need. I grew up partly in Philadelphia and then partly mostly here in California and did the East Coast a lot. So I personally lived around Black people who were Blacker than me, pigment, and who were Cuban and Dominican and Haitian, and like they was like real Black folks, and I felt part of that in my experience with them. And even though they were in the Latin environments and how they grew up in different countries, they still shared somewhat of the experience of colorism that Black people share. Because sometimes I find it very hard when I don't see beautifully Black melanated people in leadership roles or them wanting to embrace something. And I just feel like it's such a hard thing, because then it's like, then I'll see them come in through that door through Latinos, because that's kind of how it happened for me. When I first moved back to the East Coast, and one of my friends was a practitioner of Ifa Palo, and she was going to get a reading, and it was from a Latin Santero, and he looked right at me and was like, I know who you are, blah, blah, blah. And he was like just explaining very basic stuff because I was asking questions. He didn't make it feel secretive, and it really empowered me to like know more, because it wasn't my lineage, but I didn't really know a lot about it. But they kind of kept the door open. I mean, helped me to go through that door. So I'm always wondering, how do we then begin to do some healing or some bridging of the gaps? It don't mean I'm gonna go join a house, but it's kind of like, how do we share? And I'm not gonna front, when I see people who sometimes they see me before I see them. They'll stop me and like, oh, you see my Lekis or my Oshun bracelet or whatever, and they'll, oh my God, like, and I'll be like, oh, hey, give them the greetings or whatever. But I always wonder, how can we start some of that healing process? Because I think sometimes as we practice spirituality, we leave out a crucial element, which is healing. Because we know most of us find our way to this spot because we were wounded. And we were trying to get some healing and some understanding. How do we get there? Is that your ear, Colette? You get ready to say something? Let me unmute you. Go ahead.
Okay. I think one very practical thing that we can do is different ilays, different houses. I know that people will be up in arms about this, but just try to stay cool. We under the Rona right now, so you don't want to get yourself in a tizzy. but we need Lukumi houses and perhaps Ifa houses. Ifa, remember, this is pretty new to the Black community in the United States in terms of when we start talking about Ifa. So we're really learning. It's even pretty new to some of the Lukumi houses in terms of some of them are not Cuban, or the Santeria houses. But if we can come together, it doesn't have to be a particular ritual, or let's say it doesn't have to be an initiation. But if we can come together, this is what my cousin, who was a Baba, God rest and keep him, this is what he did. He had his Ifa house as well as his Lukumi house, and they came together. They would come together on his Orisha birthday every year, which was a big celebration. Or they would come together if he was having a bembe. So if we can come together and we can talk about these things, and we can, in some cases, share rituals. You do it one way, I do it another. Let's share this and see how we can meet in the middle. There's no reason for us to have this rift. Or this separation. It's not really a rift, it's a separation. But we're human, and we're babies when it comes to our African traditional systems. We're really babes in the woods. When you go to Africa, when you go to Nigeria or other parts of Africa, depending on the tradition, you can be going to Mama Wata or something else, Ekon in Ghana. Those people have been doing this. They've been doing this for thousands of years. They know what the hell they're doing. We are doing the best we can with what we got, and you have to think of the kind of people we are because of the way we've been socialized. We've been socialized to fight with each other. And other people, that's not part of their makeup. They're not going around in different little towns. Everybody's trying to survive. Ain't nobody got time to be fighting with each other. Survive and thrive. Thrive is really what I should be saying. And we get all in a tizzy with each other about this sister's not doing that, this Baba's not doing that, these two are doing something else, and a whole lot of petty crap. We ain't got time for that. So I think if the houses can start to socialize with each other and have some food, it ain't nothing better than having some good Cuban food, I tell you that. And having some good old Southern food as well. So I think that's one thing that we could do.
Yeah, really quick. I know tonight is the full moon.
Mm-hmm.
Elaborate on the full moon for just a little bit.
I'm sorry, what about the full moon?
Talk about the full moon. Like, what do you do when there's a full moon?
Okay. For those of you who are on Facebook, you can go to Yeye Feeney's page, and she has a good thing on the full moon on her page. For those who are not, tonight is Grandmother Moon's night. It's a full moon. I think it's 10:37 p.m. or 10:35 p.m. that the moon will be full. You want to put something, first of all, you want to acknowledge Grandmother Moon and her goodness, because she is she comes every 28 days. She is like the woman because we have our menaces every 28 days until we get old enough to get rid of it, which is a wonderful thing. So you want to acknowledge her. She's the rhythm. She's like the rhythm of Maya. She's the rhythm of the ocean, the waves coming in and the waves coming out. This full moon is coming out of the house of Libra. So Libra, the scales, that will give us balance and harmony and great for relationships as well. And some of the things that you can do, you can put out a glass of water. You can, if you have crystals, you can put your crystals out that need to be cleansed. Of course, if you have crystals, you know that there are certain crystals that you don't cleanse. So you would know that if you have crystals. You can put out milk and honey. Gosh, we sure do need that around this time. Put out a bowl of milk and some honey. And so and then you can ask her to fill you up with abundance and everything in your life. I know Yeye Fini puts a purse up. She tells us to put our purses up or our pocketbook, whatever you want to call it, your wallet, whatever you carry your money in, put that up and ask Grandmother Moon to fill it up, so she can fill us up with abundance. It's always good to take a spiritual bath. And at this time of the moon, I would take a nice, sweet spiritual bath. And or if you feel that you want to get rid of any kind of negative energy, then you're going to take a cleansing bath. So, and Yeye Fini also has that on, very good suggestions of that on her her Facebook page and her webpage. So yeah, those are some of the things that you can do. But just go outside, look up at the moon, and say a prayer and give thanksgiving, and then ask for whatever it is that you may want to ask for. Does that help in any way?
Yes, it does. And you know why I asked you about that? We talked about that yesterday offline. But I feel like that all of that is a part of communion with nature. And I don't care if you're African or not. Being in tune with nature, with the moon cycle, with the sun, all of that. We should really be knowing that, honestly. Like all jokes aside, like that should not be no hidden secret that you would have to spend $2,000 to learn. Like that's crazy. Even though you may not even learn that. That's a whole other story. Comments in the room really quick. I'm gonna start with LaDonna said, hold on. Sorry, y'all. Hold on. LaDonna says, at the risk, let me make this bigger because I keep forgetting how to wear glasses. Okay. So at the risk of sounding like a jerk, we cannot make people love us. Everybody who loves the vibe of this tradition isn't going to honor the African root it came from or her descendants. Even when they're looking us in the face, the healing might be that we simply rock with those who rock with us and leave the rest to Eshu. Madonna love Eshu, I'll tell you, she just love Eshu. She said this is, then Nicole says, this is very interesting. I live in a community where there's a great deal of Africans whose attitudes towards African Americans is very disrespectful and the energy is felt. I found myself in an inner desire to connect with them because I want to learn about African tradition, and their energy made me feel rejected. Although this may seem a basic question, can you speak to that? That's actually a really good question. Thank you, Cousin Nicole, for that. Because I do think that it's like almost like an assumption that all African people practice somewhat the same thing, and or because that's a whole other story. Anybody want to speak to that part? Or I get what I think. Okay, hold on here. Bam, there you go.
Which one, me? Okay. You know, when I went to school in the high school in Berkeley, and it used to be said like, well, you know, they don't like us, you know, and there was a lot of energy around that time. As I grew older and stuff and chose to branch off into different ways of thinking and all that, you know, and I ran into different people. They are different from different parts of Africa. All people don't think the same. It was because some people somebody ran across, or a few people ran across, and a certain whatever acted like that. It's like how we're here in America. We don't all have the same. If somebody's in New York and somebody's in Cali, is not the same energy, you know, for whatever reason it is. But you know, I began to really have to look at people in a whole other aspect, see when they were saying in Africa that, you know, they're all not the same. When I met Baba, it was the first one that I felt that I could approach from Nigeria in particular. The way in which I did it was a nice, calming, you know, friendly, you know, just a whole nother energy that I had not met from other Nigerians at that time of my life. You know, so like, we have to look at that. That's how the four of us are different people. You know, I've never met Iya before, but I know you other two sisters, and you've got similar thoughts. We're different, and you know, given that respect, you know, that it's okay. And don't just assume because we see somebody from, you know, that's born and raised on the motherland that we're just thinking bad about us. You know, I spent last month. I spent 2 long times, a 3-hour session and a 5-hour session with, you know, a brother and a sister from Nigeria who are they're both Yoruba. One is his lineage people are Muslim. His wife is Christian. But tradition is in their lives. They talk about Oshun and you know all the different aspects. It was nice to be able to talk to someone who has the respect of who they are individually, be able to share, um, sorry, to share, bring together a lot of what I have been learning all these years, where I could understand it, and it was such a nice, relieving energy than what we do run into. You know, there have been times where there have been babalawos, you know, where you have this crew of females that you have to kind of go through to get to talk to, and then all this other. And when you can get past that, where people feel like you're people, you're just people, just wanted to know, just wanted to feel, just wanted to share. It's a whole different energy, you know. So we still have to deal with each other individually, but be able to come together. Because I really embrace it. I have been embracing for a long time. You know, we all need to be able to come together and not feel like, so there are differences in our different ilays that we're in, or our temples that we're in, but that's okay. We're different people. We're all going to go to the same ocean at some point with just different rivers getting there. And then that's how we have to deal with when we're talking about who we are in the practice that we do. People around us will ask you, so what do you do? Why do you feel like how you do? And you can talk about, this is who you are. It's just like, well, because I practice Ifa, I can do it this way. No, this is who I am. This is the life that I live. These are some of the things I might do. So it's not like an intimidating kind of thing to each other, like you're so much better than everybody else. Because, you know, just in the 2 days just being on here with the officers has been, you know, nice for me. Because we don't have time, and we don't do enough to just have these kind of conversations and from different areas with other people. You know, there's not that arena. So I appreciate you creating this arena for that to happen. You know, especially now where we physically can't get together and stuff. I've never been to a Bembe. You know, I always hear about them stuff, and I reflect all the people that have been to them, and they're really interesting. I've never been to one.
I love it. I said I love a Bimbe. I've been to many. Oh.
Yes, and so I'm you know, and I hear that. I always hear that people have such a good time. I just never actually really attended what is called a Bimbe. And I'm like, okay, you know, so one day I'll get there and, you know, check it out. But it's like, you know, there's just a lot that we just don't know. To be in such a situation where people just don't, you know, people close up and don't want to share. It's like, why is it so secret? Why can't I know what it is? How are we going to know? You know, how we don't share. We don't. You don't grow to respect. You don't respect what you don't know about. Yeah, I was always a person in like the churches. I'm asking a question, like, well, you just need to believe. You're a backslider because you don't just believe. It's like, well, no, I want to know, why am I doing what I'm doing? What's happening? You know, and I have been able to find that more than not in this way of life that we're in.
Anybody else want to try to tackle that a little bit? Anybody else? All I was going to say to it is kind of ditto to what you're saying. I think sometimes in America, those of us who are not in Africa like that, we don't understand that Africans are people who've had experiences with colonialism, that they're also struggling with imagery. The same way we have Black people in America struggling with their Blackness or their Africanism, so do Africans. And I think sometimes it's like looking at someone being like, they have everything. They got their own language. They got this, they got that. But they also got colonized mentally. So I know sometimes you see people and you want to connect with them, but they struggling like we struggling. We just think that they have something that we need. But sometimes you got something that they need too, especially when you're dealing with the ones who are here. And I could just speak for experience because I've, you know, been able to be in a lot of communities. And I watch them do some shit that we don't even do. Like we be like, we don't be watching. I mean, like in my immediate family, like we do like Black stuff, like, you know, like in a joking way, where they're really doing stuff that a white British person would do. And you'd be like, well, what? You know, but for them, that's a part of their survival. You know, that's how they learn to survive this experience. And so I just feel like you gotta feel the energy. That's how I feel. Even when I meet regular Black people. So I know how, I'm not going to front. Sometimes I compartmentalize people because I don't feel like dealing with it. But then there's some people I meet and be like, God, I'm going to get friends with this person because they vibe was so bomb. I just want to know, how did they get that bomb vibe? Or how did they, you know, how did they get to do blah, blah, blah. So it's the same way when you're drawn to people because they have something that you know your spirit needs. And then there's some people it's like, oh, well, like we said hi to each other and bye, and that's great. We had a soda together and we done. Like, you know, I don't try to make it be something, but I do understand. I do want to say this. I do think for some Black people, when we see Africans, there is this sometimes a connection only because they're from a place where we know we're from, but we don't know where we're from in that place. So I do get that sense of wanting to connect, you know, especially when you look exactly like these people. Because I have people in my family, people like somebody have so many different colors. Well, I don't have that in my family. I have very distinct Black people in my family that when people meet them, they immediately think they're from Africa. They don't say what you mix with. They say, where you from in Africa? My sisters get that. My nieces get that. My nephews get that because they look like they flat up out of the origins of humans, you know, the way that they look. Then they'll be like, well, we from right here. Like, because they don't know. And I'll be like, no, y'all, we have family to continent. I'm the person trying to, you know, let us know. We are from some places. We don't have one distinct place. But, you know, because when people see them, they see African. They don't even see American. They see African. So to really want to know where you're from, because people keep identifying you as such, that is a longing. That's definitely a deep longing. And I think that's a part of why we got to connect to that root. That's what keeps calling you when you see them. Ia Mama said, there shouldn't be a separation. Our Ile is Lukume, Ifa, and Palo. I do agree. We need to learn to share knowledge. LaDonna says, breaking bread together is always healing. Nicole says, listening to this conversation helps bring healing for me. Thank you. Ia said, Ashe. I think she was saying Ashe earlier when you were speaking, Ia Colette. And then Sister Thea said, I think she's out of New Orleans. She says, what makes sense to my spirit is just as we were stolen at certain times in clumps in various ethnicities and practices and religions. So we will find our way out and back through the healing release of our confusion. I believe we must follow spirit guidance and do our spiritual healing work from the violence we've endured on Turtle Island. We are one and are many. I have Palo spirits. I call to Ifa. I have indigenous roots, and they all need my light as I am living. Adadi Kofi told me that I am a priestess, whether I choose Christian church, Iya, Akan, or Yoruba. I was confused when I heard that. However, I'm getting clear because of my daily practice connection with spirit after 14 years on this path. It starts with making sense to me, started making sense to me in the way that is used today, finally. Iya Mama said, but remember to take spiritual bath to take off negative energy before you take a sweet bath for prosperity. So she said you need to clean yourself off, before you get in that bath. Right on. Another sister said, somebody said, thank you. And then Kay Simpson says, yes, they are struggling just like us. Yeah, I learned that when I really went to the continent, like a few times. I began to understand that because first somebody gave me the best piece of advice, and it actually was Queen Mother Iya Louisa T says, when you go to Africa, don't bring your judgments. And that's kind of hard because everybody has a judgment. She said, but try your damnedest to not bring your judgment. And sometimes that's hard because you think Africa, according to some Black folks, is going to be plush and there's going to be mangoes falling off the tree and we're going to all be chilling. I've never seen that place nowhere on the planet. But, in our mind, we have this utopia of going back to something. And she was like, please leave that fantasy in California when you go. Which is probably one of the best pieces of advice I ever gotten from her. I mean, a lot of advice, but that one just made so much sense for me. Final question as we wrap this up. How would you propose that people in their everyday life could use, what an Ifa that they could use to help them ascend to having more understanding of their true self? Not the made up self, but the true self. Because Black folks, we famous for making up shit. I'm not gonna lie. I think the part of that was survival. So we'll make up lineages, we'll make up stories about who we are, but it don't line up with your true self, which is why sometimes we struggle. All right, who's going first? That's our wrap-up question. Iya, Colette? Okay, hold on.
That's a hard question. What can we find in Ifa to make us a better person? Am I getting that right?
A better person, like to get to your true self.
That was it. To get to your true self. For me, have a conversation with your ancestors. If you don't have an ancestor altar or a table, set one up. And it's a place of energy. It's a place of, I dare use the word magic. Go to your ancestors and let them know what you desire, that you desire to find, not to find, but to reaffirm your true self. And I can guarantee you, your ancestors will see you through that. Now, the one thing that you must do though is listen, 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 and be consistent in your homage or your veneration of those ancestors. Um, that's where I would start. I always start with the ancestors. One other thing that I'd like to say here, which I always say because for me it's important, and that is the Orisha choose you. You do not choose the Orisha. If you are meant to be a part of Ifa, Lukumi, Santeria, whatever, you will know because the Orisha, they choose you. They'll come to you. And a lot of times it starts, or most of the time, it starts with your Egun, with your ancestors, because you have a lineage. You have ancient ones behind you, and that's your lineage. It will come to the fore, but you must ask, you must speak, and then you must listen. Listen.
Who else is next? Yeah. You gotta raise your hand. And who's going next? Is that you? Okay. Bam.
I don't have much to say, so I'll be brief. I just wanted to say yes, yes, yes to everything Ia Colette said. Because it's like I'm glad that she brought up the point that the Orishas would choose you, like, because I think one thing that's important for us in our spiritual journey in just in life in general is to know that we're significant. Like, and in the process of whatever happens to you personally, to let you know that that's what's happening. Like, you're being brought into the room. It does remind you that you are created not just for nothing. You know what I mean? Not just to endure abuse. Life is not a contest to see how much suffering you can endure. And it's not a popularity contest. It's none of those things that we can get pulled into thinking about constantly whether or not we meet the approval of other people. But again, that you're a unique, unrepeatable miracle, that you have a Godhead, an individual Godhead that is also connected to the collective, and that the way you can map yourself back so that you have the experience of really knowing. It's a difference between having an intellectual understanding, like we could talk all day and give a bunch of facts, but once you experience through prayer and listening is a huge part of the tradition. I know that Ia is the only one who really said that she meditates, but it's very helpful to just get still and quiet and give that time for communication to be two ways. Because if what we're struggling is really identity and knowing who and what we are and where we belong, then we should allow the space for our ancestors to guide us to the truth of that, the truth of our own being. That's all I'm gonna say. You're muted.
Hey, sis, you're up.
Okay. So I appreciate the comments that both y'all made in regards to our Egungun, our ancestors, and my addition into that would be to ask our spiritual heads, to help us, guide us to how do we talk to our ancestors? How do we talk to our Egungun? How do we make that lineage permeate throughout us? Because, like you said, the Orisha have chosen us. we say who's ruling our head, although we are fully initiated, some of us, into our practice, and we say, okay, so we have our spiritual head in there also. So asking that guidance so that our eyes and our ears and our mouth are open enough properly so that our true selves can, as it's developing, it comes out our true self to all of me. Thank you, sis. Okay.
All right, family. Well, y'all, we just completed another conversation today, which is awesome. I think that we should be definitely thinking about how to be better, especially during this time. I look at this time as the special period of the cleansing. And I don't mean cleansing like, scrubbing your kitchen floor, but the cleansing of yourself. Like sometimes isolation brings out, and you are being able to be quarantined a little bit allows you to clean up yourself. And this morning I started off. I got up very early, which I was shocked because usually I just lay in the bed and like start watching the old school movies. But I got up, got a shower, and then went immediately to my prayer room. I was in there for about an hour and was able to do a whole bunch of stuff and prayers. So I was like, I got to do that more. It just helps me to stay more balanced. And I also did some arts and crafts the other day. I made a really beautiful Oshun jar and a Yemaya jar. I always make stuff for them. But it's just so pretty. It has kairis and glitter. And I just felt like a little kid. I thought I was at Montessori school or something like that. But it just felt really good. So I look forward to us having these conversations. Y'all really just make me, I'm not a churchgoer. I mean, I go every now and then for some music because I get invited. But this to me is like getting that daily instruction. Since I don't have elders or sister friends that I can just go hang out with on the stoop or on the steps or in the garage or in the backyard, I get to do this every day with you all, at least Monday through Friday. So anyway, family, I look forward to talking with y'all again tomorrow. And thank y'all so much. And so, ladies, I'm going to end the podcast, but don't y'all hang up. So I'm just going to end this. Peace, family. So hold on. Bam.